The date was April 17, 2025. High above the arid landscape of western Yemen, the night sky held a secret. On a Houthi radar console, a ghostly heat signature materialized fast, high, and utterly silent. Operators, accustomed to the routine dance of surveillance and counter-surveillance, made a fatal assumption. It was merely a drone, another common target for their Sciad surface-to-air missiles. Confidently, they armed a pair, locked onto the fleeting signature, and launched. But their target wasn't a drone, it was the B-2 Spirit, the near-mythical flying wing of the U.S. Air Force, an aircraft designed to be an invisible sword, cloaked in radar-absorbent materials and shaped with angles that defy detection. The B-2 is a phantom. You don't see it unless it wants to be seen. And that night, it most certainly did not. The Sciad missiles screamed into the void, burning furiously towards their calculated intercept point. But the Spirit was already gone. Not hit, not damaged, simply vanished. It had slipped through their grasp before the warheads even reached altitude. While the Houthi operators scrambled below, trying to comprehend the radar screen's sudden emptiness, the B-2 continued its mission, smooth and silent, even as it evaded. Its powerful sensors were already feeding live reconnaissance data across the Indian Ocean to the strategic hub at Diego Garcia. What the B-2 saw and what it shared would ignite a retaliation the world was unprepared for. This wasn't the familiar pattern of drone swarms near Ras Issa or warning shots from a distant destroyer. This was different. This was the trigger the moment the Houthis made the gravest error possible. They fired on the wrong aircraft. Their mistake began with that initial lock-on. Believing they tracked a relatively slow, unmanned USMQ-9 Reaper coming along Yemen's coast, they failed to recognize the truth. This wasn't a casual sweep for radar spikes. It was a fully operational stealth bomber, deep within their airspace, actively observing them. The B-2, flying high and cloaked, its radar cross-section smaller than a bird's, had likely triggered only the briefest, faintest ping on their systems, just enough for a desperate shot. From a hidden SAM site, dug into a rocky hillside near Al-Hudaydah, the two missiles streaked upwards. On board the Spirit, threat receivers chirped almost dismissively. The pilot, mid-mission, executed practiced defensive maneuvers and deployed countermeasures. There was no frantic dive, no desperate race for speed. The bomber simply let its inherent stealth do what it was engineered for: disappear. The missiles lost their lock, fumbling blindly in the empty sky. No detonation, no impact, nothing. But the B-2's sensors missed nothing. They recorded it all: launch vectors, infrared signatures, missile trajectories, and crucially, the precise coordinates of the offending launch site. Back at Diego Garcia, this data flooded into the live mission channel. Within seconds, analysts flagged the origin point, mapped the terrain, identified thermal signatures of supporting equipment. The bomber hadn't just dodged a bullet, it had pinpointed the entire threat network. And here, the script deviated sharply from standard procedure. Normally, even a B-2 would complete its reconnaissance, land, upload data, and let ground command plan the next steps. But this night was different. The Spirit wasn't just scouting, it was fully armed, carrying GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators and a suite of JDAMs optimized for hardened targets. The attack on the B-2 was deemed a direct act of aggression. Command didn't need hours. The decision was immediate: retaliate. And retaliation from a B-2 is unlike any other. It arrives without fanfare, without warning, without the fiery tracers that announce conventional attacks. It comes in silence, with absolute precision and total surprise. High above, masked by clouds and the Earth's curvature, the B-2 adjusted its course. A new strike profile, uploaded from command, guided its slight bank southward. The small correction placed its devastating payload within perfect striking range, while the Houthi crew below likely scanned the horizon, perhaps even celebrating a perceived kill. The Spirit locked onto the GPS coordinates. The first pair of JDAMs released without a sound, falling silently. Guided by gravity and satellite adjustments, they struck within 1 meter of their target, an equipment hub concealed near a bunker. The detonation was instantaneous, followed by secondary explosions that ripped through the hillside, illuminating the hidden site. What had been a launch point seconds before was now a blazing crater. But the B-2 wasn't finished. 2 more bombs followed, targeting a hardened underground shelter identified by intelligence. The 5,000-pound penetrators slammed into the earth, doing exactly what they were designed for. From the moment the Houthis fired their ill-fated missiles to the final, devastating explosion, less than 15 minutes had passed. 15 minutes from confident launch to absolute annihilation. And the B-2, it was already gone, climbing westward, invisible, untouchable, mission complete. Its presence wasn't for show. It represented deep strike capability, reserved for targets impervious to lesser means. The B-2 is a strategic lever, its deployment signaling momentous events. Yet, even in 2025, its ability to operate like a ghost shocked adversaries. The Houthi decision to fire wasn't just dangerous, it was reckless. They had provoked an unseen giant. Their failed strike didn't just trigger immediate retribution. It unleashed a torrent of high-fidelity data. The B-2 hadn't just dropped bombs, it had painted the battlefield, marking supply depots, mapping communication hubs, capturing thermal imagery feeding a real-time view of Houthi operations directly to U.S. Joint Command centers, all while remaining invisible. This detailed intelligence paved the way for what came next, a coordinated onslaught, known as the 6-Minute Storm. A-18 Hornets, launching from a carrier strike group, screamed towards the Yemeni coastline. Armed with GBU-38 JDAMs and AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missiles, the first targets were precisely where the B-2 indicated, the remnants of the same SAM battery that had dared to fire. Precision bombs obliterated the site. Moments later, 2 kilometers south, a buried communications node, silent for weeks, but exposed by the B-2, was erased by a bunker buster. Simultaneously, the focus shifted to Ras Issa, not just a port, but a strategic artery for the Houthis' fuel, finance, logistics. They had likely calculated the U.S. wouldn't touch it, deeming it too civilian, too high risk. They were wrong. At 0117 local time, Super Hornets swept in low, their signatures masked by A-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft. Surgical JDAM strikes targeted fuel clusters and suspected underground tunnels. Within 30 seconds, secondary blasts erupted across the terminal's northern sector, a textbook chain reaction. Thermal imagery painted a picture of sequential infernos. By the time the second wave hit, Ras Issa resembled a smoldering canyon. Offshore, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer added to the fury. Its vertical launch system cells opened, sending the Tomahawk cruise missiles streaking low over the sea towards Ras Issa's southern perimeter. Intelligence suggested a weapons transfer was underway inside a warehouse disguised as an oil depot. One Tomahawk hit the building directly, the other slammed into a suspected tunnel entrance, collapsing the rock face above. The entire coordinated strike lasted just under 6 minutes. 17 targets were hit. On the ground, chaos reigned. Houthi radio transmissions abruptly cut off, radar sites went dark. Infrared sensors tracked vehicles fleeing inland, desperate and disorganized. There was no coordinated response, no retaliation, only shock and disarray. Pentagon logs registered the outcome. No collateral damage outside designated zones. No U.S. casualties. All primary objectives neutralized. Yet, the historical significance wasn't merely the destruction. It was the catalyst. A single mistake firing at a ghost they mistook for a drone had summoned the full, terrifying power of American stealth aviation, carrier-based firepower, and precision warfare doctrine. This wasn't simple revenge. It was established policy enacted with blinding speed. The message, delivered in steel and fire, was unambiguous, resonating far beyond Yemen, reaching Tehran and Moscow. Provoke American high-value assets, and the response will be swift, overwhelming, and devastating. The rules had demonstrably changed. For the Houthis, the realization was brutal. They hadn't just fired on a bomber. They had opened a door to a level of conflict they could not possibly contain or comprehend. By sunrise, the smoke plume from Ras Issa was visible from space, a blackened scar on the Red Sea coast, a testament to a night where a phantom struck back with unimaginable force.